That's why I love bringing freelancers into challenging projects. They bring domain knowledge in that is not only surprising, but often quite effective against what we're trying to do. I think the most important thing about innovation, I'm talking about this in almost every talk, is the value of flexibility in your approach to organizational design, right? You need to become a remote-friendly employer if you want to have more innovation, because the most innovative talents in the world, many of them want to work from anywhere, not just in your building. You need to bring a flexible attitude about talent resourcing where it all doesn't have to be a guest TE. That's an FTE without science behind it. You're willing to look at independent professionals like freelancers. You need to bring a flexible approach into work arrangements.
Hello, and welcome to the Keynote Curators podcast. Our guest today is Tim Sanders. You're in for a treat. Tim is a brilliant keynote speaker, extraordinary businessman, but more importantly, a love cat. That's right. Best-selling New York Times author, is a technology pioneer. He's the vice president of customer insights at Upwork and the author of the famous Love is the Killer app. In our conversation, we're going to talk about all things work, teamwork, supervising work, hybrid work, work from home, back to the office, and how to best optimize your workforce, providing a context and a framework of creativity and fun. This is an extraordinary conversation. It's very appropriate for the time we're living in. And if you want to have a leg up on your competition, if you want to expand your capacities, tune in and learn. Thanks for joining us and stick around. So welcome to today's version of Curated Insights with Seth Dechtman, our guest, but more importantly, my dear friend, longtime friend, Tim Sanders, who is the VP of Customer Insights at Upwork, has joined us and will be sharing his insights on everything having to do with the open talent ecosystem, the new future of work, and so many other topics. Thank you, Tim, and welcome.
Glad to be with you, Seth.
Tim, I want to start right in the deep end. Can you tell us a little bit about, or a lot about, the open talent ecosystem?
So the open talent ecosystem is a world where you can resource work for your business, not just with full-time employees, but with independent professionals. Seth, think freelancers, contractors, virtual teams. And in an open talent model, you don't think about talent acquisition, you think about talent access. Here's the reason why. Some of the top talent in key domains like computer programming, design, creative, analytics, research, they're never going to enter the closed talent ecosystem. That means they'll never be available for full-time employment. They are business owners. They would prefer to be a freelancer working for 3 or 4 businesses than be acquired 100%, putting all of their eggs in one basket. They look around, they see their older brothers getting laid off, whether it's the Great Recession of 2008 or COVID in 2020, and they know they can do better. So the open talent ecosystem is when you as a leader make the decision to put more science behind how you access talent. You begin to ask difficult questions of managers asking to open job requisitions. You ask, how much time will that worker spend on task? Meaning working within her area of expertise. Is it 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week? It better be 30 hours a week if you're hiring them full time. Hint, maybe 10 hours they can float around to meetings and collaborate. But it's more scientific to ask yourself, is this really a full-time hire versus is it a fractional hire? The last thing I'll say here, as you begin to leverage the open talent ecosystem, a few great things happen. Number one, you develop this virtual talent bench that allows you to backfill any talent or skills gap in days, not weeks, not months, like you do in traditional talent acquisition.
Sure.
But I believe the most important benefit, and you can see it from this graphic right here, is that when you take this new digital approach to sourcing talent through platforms like Upwork, your core of full-time team members remains steady through ups and downs. As you can see on the right here, this world you're building is not only bigger, it's more agile. A lot of people have talked to me about this concept of headcount creep. I don't know if you've heard about this before, but headcount creep is when during a recession or during a crisis, you hire freeze, or maybe you even trim some of the workforce, usually B minus C players, and you pretty much get to the perfect size of agile but effective. And then what happens, Seth? Growth kicks in, you feel a lot of pressure. What do? You
That's
add
right.
back a bunch of headcount, and all of a sudden now you become bloated as an organization. You can't pivot when things change. And most importantly, your cost structure is fixed. To quote one of my favorite marketing professors in the world, Professor Galloway, he says that during a time like this, cash flow is great for survival purposes, but the real gangster move is to have a variable cost structure.
I use freelancers. I'm a small business.
Mm-hmm.
And what you just said is what I've lived during COVID.
Yeah.
I've had the agility to call on a bench of talent for various projects and backups. If I call on somebody on the bench and they're unfortunately unavailable, I've got somebody with the same skills that can just fill right in.
Yeah.
Couple of questions, Tim. As I establish a relationship with my freelancers or other organizations, and these freelancers expand their capacities with you, where is it as a leader who's making this gangster move to have this variable cost at your accessible to your bottom line, that you keep them engaged and accessible for you to keep pulling on them to work for you?
Great question. The first thing you've got to do is, as you bring a freelancer on board, you should onboard her with the same level of detail that you would a full-time employee. It doesn't take that long. I have 13 freelancers on my bench. I spend a few hours every time I bring one on, onboarding them about what's the mission of Upwork. Because we have a mission, and that is to create economic opportunities so people can have better lives. What's our vision? To put Upwork or independent talent at the heart of every business. I have this conversation with them about what we're trying to do so they can have some emotional value proposition. Now, you've heard me talk about this before. Everybody needs an EVP, not necessarily an executive vice president. You definitely need an emotional value proposition. Treat freelancers with the same eye on relationship retention as you do a full-time hire. Onboard them with care. Number two, make them part of the team that they're working on. There is a way that you do more mature work on a platform like Upwork, and that's moving beyond gigs. So you're not just asking somebody to design a logo or help you crisp up a PowerPoint. You're bringing them into a project, sort of like you've brought your freelancers into Curated Insights, right? They're part of the project. You ask them for their advice. You collaborate with them around what does the outcome look like. There's research, a Center for Research on Self-Employment in the United Kingdom, that says that when you develop a relationship by being inclusive with freelancers, they bring their knowledge from other projects to you, and it creates a boost in innovation. In fact, what this research says is that in the United Kingdom, the high-skilled freelancer economy is producing more value than all of the creative industries combined. But it comes down to building relationships. And here's the last thing. Stay in touch. There's a few freelancers I haven't worked with in a few months because the project cadence hasn't called for it, and we finished the last project. However, I communicate with them at least once every few weeks to find out what they're working on, to see if there's anything I can do for them. In fact, some of my favorite ones I make a habit out of referring business to. Nothing keeps a person happy with you and engaged with you more than referring business to them.
You basically enumerated everything that I've experienced. So I have 4 freelancers, and I've taken a couple of moves right out of your book where I'm either, is a gesture, an audio book that I know that they would benefit from specifically in their area of work or interest, because I've gotten to know them through relationship, what their side hustles are or what their other clients' projects are. So take that and tell us a little bit about how medium or larger enterprises can leverage freelance to scale.
Yes, and I'd love to talk to you about that because that's my focus at Upwork. But before I do that, I just want to double click on what you said. Dale Carnegie often said that you will accomplish more developing an interest in people than trying to get people interested in you. And I think it's really important to get to know your freelancers, understand what they want, what they need, what their goals and aspirations are, and serve those. So in your case, you give them an audiobook because it fits something that they've got on their roadmap. But the easiest way we can do that with freelancers is be a business partner with them, mentor them, give them very helpful, cheerful, constructive feedback on how they can improve their business, whether it's improving how they market or how they've set up their profile, improving their communication responsiveness, as I'm going to mention in a minute, for more discerning enterprise clients, or also just give them advice on how to better structure their business. Many of them are starting their first business of their entire career.
That's right.
And you can be incredibly helpful to them about how to keep their costs down, but at the same time, how to also keep their profile up. Now, let's talk about medium and large businesses using freelancers. The first thing to think about as an enterprise when you use freelancers is to make sure you're working through an enterprise platform that comes with the right tools. So enterprise users can take advantage of platforms, say like Upwork, by first of all, taking advantage of something called solution architecture. So a solution architecture specialist would come into an enterprise and analyze inside a center of excellence like marketing or tech, for example, exactly where the freelance opportunities are. In other words, for the technology piece, the solution architect can come in and take a look at growth projects that are still on the whiteboard and help you taskify those projects up front, figure out which one of those are outside of your core tech stack, meaning everything that could be worked on in the cloud, for example, or data that's outside, it's abstracted, meaning it's outside of actual access. And then all of a sudden, you've defined maybe 5, 10, 100 freelance opportunities within a singular center of excellence. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to make sure and get your managers involved, seeing it as a way for them to get the velocity of their work increased and give them, if at all possible, direct access to the platform. I cannot underscore how important it is for enterprises not to treat the freelance economy like they treat staffing. So staffing provides you people from a talent pool who are temporaries. They are often looking for their next job. You're not going to develop a long relationship with them because they're going to get their next job and be gone. Freelancers want a long-term relationship. Staffing models do everything that's, if you will, very service-oriented. So a manager goes to a staffing firm and says, I need 6 people to work on a mobile software project. They go find them. They ship them to you.
Right.
That's not how freelance economy works.
Just
freelance
the word
economy,
itself, just the word itself sounds so constraining, you
Yeah.
know, and then freelance is the other side of the coin where
right.
encouraging engagement, encouraging them to generate their own ideas and bring forth and initiate from their side.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what the key is then is you've got digital platforms like Upwork. You want to give your managers direct access to go on that platform, post their own job, screen their own candidates, onboard them. Why is that the case? Well, first of all, they're going to do it a lot faster. Second of all, it's hard for most managers to actually enunciate clearly what they're looking for. So often all you get's resume matches. You know that's not the secret to success. You want to see the body of work. You want to see the portfolio. And I'll tell you something else, Seth. The millennial managers who are taking over along with Generation Z, they prefer to shop for their own supplies. They would prefer direct access to a platform because what happens is they build up this competency of being able to post a job that gets a lot of results using search hacks, if you will, to find exactly who they should invite. Think about how wonderful a 30-year-old is on Google finding stuff versus say an old boomer like me. We want them to become fluent in Freelancer. So don't treat it like staffing and keep it all arm's length locked up in the procurement department.
Yeah, and that's important. I can tell you my experience from using the platform, writing the proper job description or what you're looking for is essential.
It is. It's essential because it attracts the right people. But I'll tell you something else just to kind of add with that. So once you've really mastered how to write the job description, basically what the job entails and what's going to catch your eye, you need to get really adept at writing the brief. So sometimes you might write a brief and it's an attachment to a job description. So let's say you're doing a creative project. In the ad agency world, they commonly call this a creative brief. And that brief really articulates the outcome and the processes you expect. If you have a strong creative brief, especially when you post a job that can be an attachment, you're going to attract the highest quality people because they know you have your act together. At the very least, when you hire a freelancer or a virtual team, you want to develop a strong creative brief so they can point to that brief and say, this is the one thing I don't yet understand. What you don't want to do is throw a job over the wall in its most general sense and then give them 15 rounds of editing. That makes you crazy, Sauce. That is not how you build a virtual talent bench.
You know, again, for a larger enterprise, this is a game changer.
Yes.
And you know my story, Tim. I've been in the cloud for nearly 20 years. And it's not because I'm this disruptor and innovator. I had personal, I wanted to go and work in the birth country of my wife in Argentina. Right. And I reverse engineered it, and I looked for all the, voice over IP and
I remember you telling me about it 10 years ago.
Yeah, longer. And, and there were a lot of holes and a lot of breakdowns along the way, but by no means do I consider myself an innovator or avant-garde or on the edge, but, it's really in my wheelhouse, this everywhere workforce. And,
that's right.
And, the working smarter, not harder. And I've seen the word human cloud floated around.
Yeah. There's a great book called The Human Cloud. I love it. 𝗚𝗂 is one of the co-authors. I interviewed him recently for my podcast. Great book.
And this is what Upwork, this is what you're serving, the human cloud.
That's right. And I want to stop and go back though. You talked about cloud. You started to use the technology cloud early, right? So you use the tech cloud to host your websites, store your information and assets, and then actually deliver application power through subscription services. Think of it as a software as a service. All of that is tech cloud, okay? It wasn't a big leap for you then to start using the human cloud. I believe that the freelance economy is the next wave of cloud efficiencies. So for large enterprises, ask yourself this: did you get any value out of cloud computing over the last 15 years? Has Amazon Web Services, Microsoft's cloud, Google Cloud, Oracle Cloud, have they all helped you not only become more agile as a tech organization, but reduce cost and increase the capacity for you to deliver value? The answer is a stunning yes. And to the extent the tech cloud helped you, human cloud will too. You're going to have to climb the same learning curve everybody does. And that is, how can we trust it to give us real-time access? And how can we work with it in a way that's just as reliable as premise computing or on-site full-time talent? That's the trick, but it's something you work through by getting the reps. And you work through it by giving your managers the opportunity to learn it like a video game, or in my case, like a drum machine.
Right. We may have covered this, Tim, but I want you to touch on collaboration and the challenge that it brings in the remote workforce. And again, without being too self-referential, I see it on my end. I'll just serve this up to you. But I have a simple mechanism when we're collaborating and we have meetings where I'm asking them to bring ideas. I'm asking them to come forth and generate. And I'm asking them that at some point I stop asking for that too.
Right.
And it's a simple mechanism. And more often than not, Tim, unless it's a glaring like, oh no, we can't go there, I'm a yes to it.
Yeah.
So
let's talk
share
about
with us
collaboration.
that collaboration freelancer world.
So I get asked this question a lot. Obviously, it's one of the keynotes I've delivered a lot this year. How do we collaborate in a distance model, right? How do we collaborate with people that are working remote, whether they're full-time, whether they're freelancer? The principles are all the same, Seth. The first thing I want to say is trust asynchronous collaboration. We never had to trust asynchronous collaboration when we were all in the office. Even when we'd have temps or contractors that would come to our office, we really relied on across the table, face-to-face, bumping into people in the hallways, all of that type of collaboration. So nothing made us trust asynchronous collaboration. But with COVID, many of us have discovered that sometimes you get the best collaboration through a Google Doc or through Microsoft SharePoint. Why? Two reasons. One, people can work at any time. You have no idea when people are in their best creative flow. I've got friends I work with. They are their most creative and effective after they put their kids to bed at 9 or 10 p.m.
Yeah.
It's a blast for them. They can't do that real time. They need to work anytime. That's one of the magics of asynchronous. The second magic of asynchronous is that everyone feels free in most situations. Everyone feels free to submit their ideas. There's really good research on this. In an asynchronous collaboration environment, even your extreme introverts who would not raise their hand or frankly turn their camera on during a Zoom collaboration will contribute to a document. Now, leaders, you need to create an environment that is psychologically safe for everyone to contribute asynchronous. So that's my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice, and I wrote about this in my last book, you need to develop a collaboration brief. I know I'm on the brief train, but as 𝘚𝘀𝗵𝗺 said, chance favors the prepared mind. So you want to create a collaboration brief before you either launch it synchronous or asynchronous that defines the problem, speculates as to its root causes, and then creates the exercise format. I want us to come together, kick some holes in the root cause analysis, or I want us to come together and come up with some solutions. You want to give people a thinking assignment, and if all possible,
Right.
customize each brief to that person's unique set of capabilities, because the creative power of incubation will set in. And more importantly, Seth, when they come to the meeting or they contribute to the document, they're rather lucid on the assumptions that sit behind their ideas.
Yeah.
They're a lot less defensive when you get into a candid conversation. Here's the final thing I want to say about this, and this is important for enterprise. Researchers are starting to find that although remote work is working really well from a productivity standpoint, we're seeing collaboration being constrained to inside certain groups versus across groups. When we had a physical working environment, you kind of solved across groups with the lunchroom, the water cooler, the hallway. You must be more intentional now as you collaborate, making sure that your team has a multitude of perspectives. Take a look at this graphic. You know, this is something I studied for several years prior to going to work at Upwork, and that is the power of 4. I believe innovation is like the Beatles. It's not just John and Paul. You got to have Ringo and George. Otherwise, it's just, Wings with a feature by John Lennon. You need all 4. As you can see here in the research, when a collaboration team represents 4 perspectives, that every center of excellence has its own perspective: growth, risk management, position. I've just explained sales operations and marketing, voice of the customer is another perspective. You get to 4, Seth, 80% of the time, you're going to walk out of a collaboration experience and have the next play that will move the needle. So be intentional about going wide.
Brilliant insight. I love that. And this is new ground. This is a paradigm shift, collaborating in the human cloud. And you, I know, have fine-tuned and recalibrated your keynotes during the COVID. And I'm your number one fan. I put you up for everything and anything, anywhere, at any time, because I know you'll deliver. Share with us what you've done to level up, upgrade, recalibrate, oriented towards this virtual delivery and bring that same level of rich engagement that you have in person on stage.
Preparation, content, delivery, it just changes in a virtual environment. What do I mean? 1, preparation has never been more important. If you used to do a 30-minute call to figure out the event, a little bit about the audience, you need to do 2 one-hour calls with the client to really understand what are the outcomes they're trying to accomplish with a virtual event. Those dollars they spend on professional speakers have never been more precious or under more scrutiny. So the new ethos of business post-COVID is to focus on outcomes, not inputs. So you don't have to have a sales conference. You want to generate more sales productivity once a year, so you have a sales conference. But what are you going for? Productivity. So your preparation better be focused on how your insights or advice takeaways generate the outcome, not only the meeting planner, but the executive producer that's writing the check. That means the leader of that part of the business that's sponsoring the event. Second of all, your content. Content must be crisper, Takeaways must come quicker. The days of a 10-minute signature story to open and a 7-minute tear-jerker signature story to close, those are over in a virtual environment. You don't have that much time. Folks, you're not the keynote speaker on that magical morning in Orlando after you met with all your buddies the night before and you walk into a ballroom that's dark and music comes up and the lights come up and you walk out on the stage in a spotlight. You're another damn Zoom meeting. That's what you are now as a virtual keynote presenter. So you'd better establish within the first few minutes an insight that gets their attention and then punctuate the content with takeaways on a regular basis that keeps their attention. Because if you thought it was hard to produce TV shows in a world of 500 channels, just try to be one of 10 Zoom meetings that day. So your content needs to be much more takeaway focused and much less reliant on long stories, to which I'll point the third idea out. You better deliver an environment that stands out from every other virtual call they have today. As you can see, I'm set up with a full 4K broadcast environment. What does that mean? Well, I have a remote video producer, a freelancer, that has helped me secure the right Sony mirrorless DSLR with the big lens that can produce the nice bokeh with my bookshelf behind me. I don't use any type of green screen. I don't use any type of a fake background because it creates ghosting. It's just odd and weird. Sound is super important in virtual. This is a very nice Mojave full capture microphone. There's a mixing board with a compressor as well as a preamplifier to get the sound podcast quality. There's a light rig in front of me. I have fiber coming to my home, which means I've got a gig down and 100 megs up, which is 20x what I need for Zoom. And I've got a redundancy. I'm telling you all this because the real competitors in virtual invest in what it takes to deliver television broadcast quality. The last thing I'll tell you is you got to keep getting better every day. I recently did a thing with author Dan Heath. He wrote one of my favorite books now. It's over here. It's over here. Oh yeah, get my perspectives right. It's the one over here, the blue one. It's called Upstream. He uses a Blackmagic video switcher that allows multiple cameras with like built-in lower thirds. He never has to share screen because his slides are projected through the webcam feed. That was cool, I thought. So I invested the money. I bought one of those. I got a freelancer who's going to train me next week on it. You have to keep upgrading your virtual game. Just because you figure out how to use a webcam doesn't mean that you're still in business in the new remote keynote world, which is going to go on for quite a while at the very least.
And what I love is that you've applied all the concepts of the open talent ecosystem to up your game.
Oh yeah,
you have your post-production freelancer. You know, I did a lot of the similar things. I had somebody counsel me on what equipment to buy, and then I executed the purchase. Then I had to install it and train myself. I had somebody else do that. So it's like you are walking the walk, and you know, taking that rich material that you have in person on that stage in Orlando, Chicago, San Diego, wherever it may be, and having it come off equal or if not better in this Zoom world is the challenge. And I know you deliver it. Yeah, I know you deliver it because my clients have told me so time after time.
You know, and it doesn't come natural. I mean, last year I hired an interview coach. I was producing an 4K interview show with leaders, similar to what you're doing. And the coach taught me how to ask the right questions, how to properly follow up. But most importantly, you know what he taught me? How to stare down the barrel of a lens for an extended period of time and to retrain myself to have the entire conversation with the other using audio only like I'm doing with you today. Simple things, right? How many times have you seen someone in an interview format spending all their time looking down at the screen in front of them? Eye contact is not something that's natural to us, but if you get somebody who used to be in TV that's a media coach, they'll bring you around in a few minutes.
My laugh is laugh of recognition because I shared with you the size of my space and I'm quite constrained. But what I found, Tim, is that I've used the constraints to my advantage. It sharpened my focus. I don't have an excess of resources and there aren't, metaphorically speaking, 30 different types of toothpaste to choose from. So I have no distractions. It focuses me in. And I got this hack from Juliet Funt.
Sure. She's great.
You have the bird tail. You know the bird tail?
Yeah, I love that. It's around the laptop. A great book, A Minute to Think. You got to read this book, everybody. A Minute to Think.
I have my little notes that I prepared for this on stickies that are making a bird tail over the tripod. And yeah, you have to stay focused and on
You
the
do.
camera and looking down the barrel of and I have a newfound respect for, I go on YouTube and I look at Letterman interviewing Cher and Madonna when they're in like their peak of unpredictability and awesomeness, but also wackiness. And the mastery of which someone like that manages and executes the conversation is just phenomenal.
Yeah,
so I have a newfound respect for that.
Yeah.
Your book, Tim, my favorite book, Love is the Killer App. You talk about the importance of great relationships in business.
Yeah.
Bring that idea forth in the context and the panorama of COVID world.
So let's level set a little bit here. Relationships are built by give and give. They are not built by give and take. Transactional acquaintances are built by give and take. What do I mean by this? You need to give to people. You need to enable them to give forward to other people. You need to expect nothing in return as you give to people. And you need to become creative to find, when you need it, the middle grounds to work effectively together. But it's about giving, okay? So you build positive relationships by sharing your intangibles, your knowledge, your network of relationships, your human compassion. These are things that actually grow as you share them with other people through feedback. So in a post-COVID world, really, all that's changed is that you and I don't get to hang out face-to-face anymore. It may be a little more occasional that you and I see each other because of the nature of working remote. But here's a few things. Number one, prepare for every interaction so you can bring a gift. It's one of the things I think about in almost every call that I have. After our interview, I'm having a catch-up call with the leader at a large company I've known for several years. This morning over breakfast, I took a look at what he's been talking about on LinkedIn. I spent a minute thinking about a couple of business challenges he's likely facing. I've taken a look at my own internal research that was connected to that thread. And I've got a couple of insights I'm waiting to give him as a gift. Now, to quote Dan Pink, I don't believe that listening is waiting for the other person to quit talking. I believe I've got to really find the opportunity to give that gift of an insight, but at the same time be an empathetic listener. So prepare to bring a gift. The second thing is be more aggressive as a super connector, not a networker. Networkers trying to swap. A lot of networkers, they think that networking is a shortcut to success. Super connectors find pleasure and meaning by putting two people together that should meet to solve a problem. You need to really stick with the goal of introducing 3 people every week virtually that should meet. And that doesn't mean you just send some email that says, hey, Seth, go meet Randy. Take over the world. You need to write a thoughtful email, okay? You need to say, hey, Seth, I just talked to you a few minutes ago about Randy. Here's his LinkedIn profile. Here's the value proposition of connecting with Randy. Hey, Randy, I told you I was going to introduce you to Seth. Here's the value proposition of what he can do. Here's his LinkedIn. And then I'm going to aggressively make sure you two at least get connected. I'm going to do that 3 times a week. I'm going to do it virtually because what I'm seeing in the research, Seth, is from a professional development standpoint, one of the greatest needs that people have today is to be connected with more people because they're not out in the world having those collisions that helped us build our massive networks in the first place.
It's like a void, you know?
It's just tougher. We have a bigger opportunity to help people than we've ever had. We just have to be very smart about it. We need to be goal-oriented about it. And I've got to emphasize this. We must expect nothing in return. When someone says to you, Seth, I really appreciate you making that connection for me. What can I do for you? I want you to explain to them. Paying it forward is what makes the world go round. Okay. I want you to make the same type of connections because as Adam Grant, author of Give and Take, once told me, tit for tat doesn't make the world a better place. But when we can coach people on generosity through our example, then we make the world a better place.
Yeah, I love his work too. You're quoting all my favorites, and I'm not name dropping, but I've got a client next week, Dan Pink is delivering an in-person event.
Dan is fabulous. Dan is
Yeah.
fabulous. Love that guy.
And
Drive
he
is an
has that
important book.
radio voice that is so authoritative, you know?
Yeah. He's great.
Yeah. A common thread in this conversation has been innovation.
Yeah.
And you talk a lot about that in your work that you do and with keynotes. I know the consulting that you've done in the past.
Yes.
At Upwork, innovation is probably one of the core virtues. If it's not spoken, it's there in the air.
I think innovation is going to be really important because we must master problem solving to move a company forward, because we've never faced more challenges. Innovation is an original idea that is appropriate to the challenge it attempts to address. That is literally how the patent department decides to give a patent. That is literally the definition of what is truly creative. It is original. It is appropriate to the challenge that it was created for. All right. So innovation isn't about being imaginative. Innovation isn't about just coming up with the new. It's about the new and the effective. Jim Collins once said, it's not an innovation if it doesn't make its way to the market. So innovation really is about team building.
Okay.
Solution storming. That's where you spend time finding the root cause in a debate environment. No, it's about solution storming. Yeah. It's not about coming up with a list of ideas. It's about a structured process of first doing root cause analysis. There's a book behind me called Think Like a Rocket Scientist. It talks about first principles. That's what folks at Google, for example, or NASA use. And first principles first asks, what really is the root cause? And you have a debate about it. So you've got to have this structured solution storm that follows smart team building, that builds a diverse team. You must make it very safe for everyone to say what they think and reveal what they know. But most importantly, Seth, you must focus on execution, rapid prototyping, operating in 2-week sprints, being willing to analyze everything from the process to the team. And you must focus audaciously in innovating against every challenge that impacts your business today, or in scenario planning next year or the year after that.
And will you be bringing that into your keynotes going forward?
Yeah, I talk about it a lot now that, there's so many things we can do to create a more innovative culture, right? So culture is a conversation about how we do things here. If you don't have an innovation culture, you end up having a preservation culture. You come up with a new idea, no matter how much it forecasts to work, people say, that's not the way we do things here. So you got to build an innovative culture. You got to bring the right people on board. You've got to champion diversity, not just diversity and inclusion, which I think is critical to creating an innovation culture, but the diversity of perspectives. That's why I love bringing freelancers into challenging projects. They bring domain knowledge in that is not only surprising, but often quite effective against what we're trying to do. I think the most important thing about innovation, I'm talking about this in almost every talk, is the value of flexibility in your approach to organizational design, right? You need to become a remote-friendly employer if you want to have more innovation, because the most innovative talents in the world, many of them want to work from anywhere, not just in your building. You need to bring a flexible attitude about talent resourcing, where it all doesn't have to be a guest TE. That's an FTE without science behind it. You're willing to look at independent professionals like freelancers. You need to bring a flexible approach into work arrangements. I wrote about this in Deal Storming, but when you want to get the most out of people, you need to understand that innovation starts at the relationship exchange. Get on Google and just research LMX, the letter LMX leadership. You'll find out that the leader-manager exchange means that you make these deals with your team members. You say, I'm going to give you a lot of latitude. Work from anywhere, work at any time, work in any way. But in exchange, I expect performance competency. The research says the thing especially high function people want from us the most is latitude and trust. And when you give it to them, they give you back competency and they give you back loyalty.
Yeah, that is for sure. I think the old paradigm, the one that is a little bit control-based, if you will.
Yes, presenteeism.
Taking attendance, if you will. That is, it's such an obvious word, but that is a disruptor where that control and the fear comes in and everything, where it's the complete opposite end of it. This morning, while I was out and then doing some last minute preparing here, my freelancers 4 of them were talking with my CRM developer, which is another freelancer, and my web developer, and they were having meetings on their own, and I wasn't even present. And that was new for me. And I didn't have anything weird going on, like, oh, I'm losing control, or what are they talking about? And there were a few things that I missed. I needed to put a request in to report back. One of them did it on their own, 2 didn't. But, it was new and it was cool for me. And it has me develop my business and expand capacities. And I'm not this lone ranger trying to be the hero to everything and everybody. So it's been transformational, Tim.
And you know what I think the biggest transformation is for you, or for anybody watching that manages or leads people, is the transformation from managing based on inputs and processes to managing based on outcomes, right? So if you learn with every person that you employ, whether full-time or fractional, if you learn how to define what's the outcome I'm looking for, how to very clearly enunciate that from the beginning, how to coach talent and resource talent to focus on the outcome, deliver the outcome, how to measure and reward performance based on the outcome, not the attendance, not the prescription to old codified processes. When you become laser focused on outcome, you get more productivity with everything you do. You attract smarter people. Now you're replicating some of the most innovative companies in the world, from Moderna to Beyond Beef to Tesla to Google. They all have a paradigm of managing outcomes. That's the killer application for leadership right now.
If you'd like to learn more about this speaker, visit our website at 𝘚𝘰𝘤𝘪𝘴.com. There you'll find dozens of videos of speakers that are a perfect fit for your event. If you'd like to reach out directly, please click on the link below in the description. My name is Seth Dechtman, and you've been watching Curated Insights.